Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vulnerability Time podcast. I am your host, published author, and PhD candidate, Josias Abriel. Before we get started, folks, just a couple quick announcements. One, the show is now accepting donations. We need to get a new laptop to continue the show. So I have a Cash App in the episode description below. You just click on the link tree and you can donate. Anything helps. There's this used laptop that I was looking at, and it's about $600 something. So that I will be needing to get that to. I found like the best and cheapest used laptop to be able to record the show, because the current laptop, she's dying on us, folks, and the software and the updates, it's starting to do its thing again. So if you would like to donate to help the show out, please do so. Anything helps. Also, if you are listening on YouTube, give this a like. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give this a 5-star rating. It will help the algorithm. I do need 10 more 5 stars to continue the show. So if you could please do that, I would truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Alrighty, everyone. So today we have a brand new special guest to the Vulnerability Time podcast, Leanna. Welcome to the show. Literally fabulous to have you. I'm genuinely excited to hear what you have to share on our topics. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about you. What do you do? You have a pretty cool accent, where you're from, um, things of that nature. Yeah. Any credentials? Share with us.
So I'm from a little place called East Grinstead, which is in the south of England. So I'm in the UK. And career-wise, I was a Metropolitan Police Officer in London, the biggest police force we have in the UK, for 18 years. That was between 2001 and 2019. And when I left, I went into the training sector across various industries. So I've been designing, delivering, and managing training for the last 7 years out here. But my most recent focus is male victims of sexual harassment, assault, and abuse. So that's what I've been focusing on.
Mm. And our topics today are very having to do with men, right? Males, those assigned male at birth. What got you passionate about that? Like, was it a person? Was it a situation? Was it your job? Is this something that you've always been passionate about growing up?
I think it was when I joined the police service. That's when it started, really. I started seeing the disparity between how we treat female victims and male victims. And I noticed that what you see on TV and in film and in books doesn't really reflect the truth, not the whole truth anyway, just
Right.
part of it. So I think a lot of us have an idea, for example, when it comes to domestic abuse,
Mhm.
that it's typically a big strong man beating up or assaulting, a small frail woman, and that's often the stereotype that we see. But that's not the entire reality.
Right.
Yes, that is a proportion, but it's not everybody. For example, I think if you asked a lot of the public what percentage of victims of domestic abuse are male, they may well say something like, oh, I don't know, 5-10%. But the truth is they're about 40%. So female victims, 60%-ish, male victims around 40%. Now, there is not a big difference there, really. It's almost even split, isn't it?
Hmm.
But I don't think that's the picture that a lot of us have in our minds. Similarly, with things like sexual harassment, sexual assault, we tend to always typically picture women and girls, and we just don't see the male victims that are everywhere around us.
Hmm. And that's very, very true, right? That reality that does exist, that we're just not, necessarily, it's not shown to us in media. Um, it's very rarely shown. I can't remember a time that it's been shown, but oh, I think the Johnny Depp case. I think that we got shown that. But other than that, like I just don't hear anything about, male victims. And, something that I do want to say, because this is vulnerability time. I really, when I said I was really looking forward to hearing your share, I truly do mean it. Folks who followed me through the show, they know my story and they know that, like, it took me so long. It took me till I was, what, 24 to actually start caring about men because of what I've been through. I lost care for men. Um, my focus was always on, you know, um, getting the women's voice out there, advocating alongside women. Um, and I did not focus at all on male. I didn't even know that that was really a thing. I definitely would have been the person that would probably have been like, oh, probably 1 to 10% of them are, victims. And I would definitely say it like in a way of like, I don't care. Um, so it took at the age of like 24, 25, it took me learning about the male suicide rates in the UK and in the US. It took me learning about that for me to start to care about males. And so hearing your share today and our conversation, it will not only help others, but it will also help me personally. Because what I want to do, I'm in a place in my life where I'm wanting to care even more about humanity, and that includes, those assigned male at birth. Because I know, at least in American society, they teach us be a man, but don't be human. But everyone's a human first before they are assigned a gender or assigned a sex, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I I want to care more, um, because men's reality matters just as much as anyone else's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, and that's the thing, I'm not trying to take anything away from female victims at all. I thought the Me Too
right,
movement was wonderful. I'm a 52-year-old woman myself, so I've seen the great progress that we've made with girls and women when it comes to them being victims of these types of offences, and I think that's fantastic, the progress. But I just want to see more progress made with male victims, really. That would
right.
be really wonderful.
Yes, exactly. Progress made with all victims.
Yeah,
Right, because it's like if someone's been a victim, been a survivor, been an overcomer, I think all of their story, the full truth, is worthy of light and worthy of progress and advocacy, right? And so that hopefully we can get to a day where this is little to none, little to no victims, right? So I think that's really beautiful. Um, so our topics today, folks, are the hidden shame men carry after abuse, why male victims stay silent, and how can we support male victims without dismissing anyone. Those are our topics today. Leanna, where would you like to start? I think that's actually a pretty good order. Um, so let's start at the hidden shame men carry after abuse. So why that topic? What's the journey look like with that topic? How have you seen that?
I think this ties into the expectations that are put on boys and men around what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine. And like you were saying before, I think a lot of young boys are brought up thinking that they need to be tough, they need to be strong, they mustn't cry, they must fight back, they must stop anyone hurting them, they must be, the victor in any sort of confrontation. Those sort of expectations aren't put on girls or women, really. They have other ones which are equally
Mhm,
unfair, but they don't. So I think that when a man or a boy becomes a victim, that's going to really attack his sense of self, his sense of masculinity, and it's going to
mhm,
make it very hard for him to own up and be vulnerable about what's happened. And I think the other problem is how that experience is received by others when they do try and share. And the very sad thing that I saw over the years, after the last sort of 15, 20 years, the number of men who've said to me that when they have tried to tell a friend, family, a boss, colleague, anyone about what's happened, they laughed at them,
Mhm.
which I think is awful. And I don't think in this day and age we would laugh at a woman or a girl if
Right.
she said she was sexually assaulted or harassed, but we are still laughing at men.
Mhm.
We're expecting them to enjoy any form of sexual contact from anyone at any time, which is ridiculous and wrong and unfair.
Mhm.
And we're laughing, thinking it's great, and we're minimizing it, we're dismissing it, we're not taking it seriously. And that's quite humiliating, I think, for a male victim.
That's very true, very valid, very yes. Yes. I I was socialized to be a girl. I was socialized to be a girl. However, I'm assigned male at birth, and my whole childhood I've been through sexual abuse and physical abuse, right? All by the hands of men. But that's the point of the matter is I felt as though my body and my security was taken from me. So that definitely shaped how I operated through life. Have Had I been socialized how my brother was, I can definitely see 'cause he was socialized to be a boy. I can definitely see, how when someone has been abused, when especially a male has been abused, I can see how that can affect the masculinity that they are taught, whatever that looks like for them. But that can definitely affect how that shows up in their life, in their body, in their actions. It does make a huge impact, whether it's almost immediate, whether it's later on in life, whether it's in other ways. But yeah, like it definitely makes an impact. So I like that you mentioned that, abuse and masculinity, those two paths, they do cross. And that's something that's not talked about, even by me. That's not something that's talked about. And I'm recognizing now in my life that that is something that needs to be talked about because I have, though most the listeners of the show are women, 33 to 38% are those assigned male at birth. And so, I'm in a place in my life now where I'm like, okay, like they matter as well. I'm at a place where I'm healed enough to finally accept that they matter just as much as anyone else. Their story matters just as much, and especially in terms of abuse and things like that. So I really appreciated you sharing that. That does abuse, regardless of what abuse and masculinity, those paths cross so much and shape each other.
Yeah, they do. And I think it's interesting when you look at the statistics of who victims talk to. It's incredibly hard, isn't it, as you know, to open up about what you've been through. Let's say when we look at female victims of sexual assault or rape, about 33% in the UK will never tell anyone as long as they live. Not friend, not family, not police, not HR, nobody. They will just live with it on their own, which I think is just awful. But when you look at male victims, it's twice as high. It's around 67%. So I think that difference does tell us something. It does tell us how especially hard it is for men to find that safe person, that safe space where they feel they can share their experience.
I don't know why, but that made me tear up. That is, whoa, that is huge. I've always had frustrations with the systems in societies, especially in first world countries, because we see the common trend, especially globally, just in general, but we see this trend of, you know, what a man should be, and that definitely shapes what comes out of their mouth. And that we scientifically, psychologically, and biologically know that, expressing feelings, you literally have to do that, or else it damages your body long term and sets you at a higher rate for cancer, higher rate for heart disease, more likely to commit suicide, more likely for mental illness, more likely for addiction. I mean, just hearing that statistic, and this is the sociologist in me coming out. For those who don't know, I'm a sociologist and a PhD student in sociology, and um, though mine is mainly focused in America, I do know a small bit, I mean just a small bit about UK and Canada. And we see there's some commonalities, right? We see there's a lot of common things about how men are. There's of course some differences, but general there is this, oh, this is what a man should be. And I have my frustrations with the systems that tell people who to think, who they should be, what they should say. Um, because when you look at the high suicide rates, and in America, there are more the folks that are assigned female at birth than folks that are assigned male at birth. However, men make up 76% of the suicides. And we know that, that correlates with what they are able to talk about and not talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's similar
Mm.
here in the UK. The male suicide rate is 3 to 5 times higher than females.
Aren't y'all
Um,
71%, right?
yeah, I
Is
mean,
it still 71% men?
it's close to it, and it's the highest
Okay.
cause of death in men under 35.
Okay.
So it's a real concern. But I find what's interesting when we talk about it is that the first thing people go to is they say, well, men don't talk. They don't talk to
Mm,
each other like women talk to each other. And sometimes it almost feels a little bit like victim blaming, because
mhm,
my experience of male victims is not so much that they won't talk, but there isn't a safe place or a safe person for them to
mm,
talk to. Because I thought,
mhm,
well, many men have spoken to me and they've not
mm,
had a problem doing that. Perhaps because they've heard what I've said and they've seen me in a training session and they realize that I will listen to them and I am respectful and I am sympathetic and I will take them seriously. So
mm,
they'll come forward and speak to me every time. And I'm not bigging myself up, but what I'm saying is that there are so many people, as I said before, who just laugh at men or
mm,
dismiss them, and minimize their experience, their pain and suffering. So maybe it's
mm.
only partly true that the problem is men don't talk about their feelings as much as women do. Maybe the problem is that we're not there to listen and we don't
Right.
listen to them with respect.
Mm. I do see that a lot, even within myself. I've had one male say that he's been abused and, sexually, and I definitely listened to him and was there for him how I would any of my female friends. However, growing up though, when a male expressed their problems internally, I would minimize it.
Mm.
I don't think I externally did it, um, but until I would say later years of my undergraduate is when I started, listening to males, and just being more present with them and being creating a safe space the best that I can, right? And um everything, so many things changed, like they just started pouring out so much to me. And so I'm throwing myself under the bus, not in a shameful way, but I definitely, have seen that show up in my life where I invalidated males. Though mine wasn't externally, mine was internally. And I think, at least for me, that's just as bad as the external, just because it's like it's training me with this mindset to continue to do that to men and to think that, oh, now if I see them on TV, I'm gonna minimize that. However, if I'm not doing externally, I'm not opening myself up for, feedback possibly to grow, right? And
Mm.
so, yes, I will definitely say I definitely was one. And it took me a while to, you know what helped me. So folks, if you're like me, what helped me is learning and listening, not just doing them separately, doing them together. Learning and listening, like when you said the 33% and the 67%, see those numbers. That's what did it for me. So for me, it was seeing the high suicide rates,
Mm.
and that did it for me. That was literally that's what it's like my whole healing journey,
Mm.
you know, broke a glass ceiling that I never thought I could break. So I think, what do you think could be a good like starting point for folks who, to grow in this area and to alleviate their frustrations in this?
I think sometimes seeing the inequality in how we treat the genders. For
Mhm,
example, something I often point out is I think of how many TV series or films I've seen where there is a scene where a woman will slap a man round the face because he said something or done something that she didn't like.
mhm,
And as the audience, we're supposed to think, yeah, go on, yeah, you were right. He deserved
mhm,
that. He did something wrong. You've slapped him around the face. Yes, it's
mhm.
empowering.
Right.
Now, just flip
That's
that
true.
in your mind. Imagine if the male character had slapped the female character around the face.
Mhm,
Imagine how we would respond as the audience. I
mhm,
don't think it would be in the same way. I think we'd be horrified and angry. Oh my goodness, a man has hit a woman,
mhm.
that's
Right.
awful. So I think this is part of the problem. We shouldn't see it differently. What I learned in being a police officer and teaching criminal law for 15 years was
Mm,
that an offense is an offense.
mhm,
If a man slaps a woman, it's assault. If a woman slaps a man, it's assault. It's the same. It doesn't
mhm.
change because of their gender.
Right.
And it's about that equality. And I think sometimes, we don't see that in some of the artistic forms like films and TV,
Mm,
etc. And I think that all sort of plays into it that we treat genders in quite different ways and sometimes very unfair ways.
mhm. That's definitely very true. There's unfairness. There's definitely privileges and unfairnesses, that are that can be gender based for sure. That's very true. Um, I have noticed that. Well, this is why I do say, I do think patriarchy definitely. Um, I know it may serve men more, but I think it harms everyone. Because the patriarchal, you know, system does put these standards upon men, right? And puts them in a box. And when someone is in a box, it takes away so much of their humanness, right? And so, in for example, like yeah, like at least in America, like who goes to therapy most? Not men. And so, but it's because they were taught, right? There's this societal teaching of a man should be this, a man should be that. And then, we're all taught that. Those of us who don't identify as males or were socialized differently, you know, we are also we're seeing them being taught that, and it's teaching us that maybe that's how they should be. And for me, mine was my frustrations blinded me from being able to validate men. I was definitely frustrated with patriarchy. I was frustrated from how I've seen men just treat people, and I was frustrated with what I went through because of men. However, and that's all valid. However, later on in my healing journey, especially getting my PhD in sociology just really opened my eyes even more to just be like, I'm more mad at the systems than I am men because who taught them all to be like this? Not all, but general consensus. Like who taught them? Who said what said that it was okay? What said that this is how masculine should be, this is how feminine should be, and you can't be both? Who said that? And so I started looking more into the systems, right? And so that helped me that also helped alleviate so many frustrations because there was a part, like I told you, 24, 25, that really helped, but I still had frustrations. And so it seemed like there was this slow um, healing these other barriers away that were impeding on my healing. And it also took me coming across hearing males say um, that they have feelings but they won't be heard.
Mm.
Hearing that from someone that I cared about, that also helped me. And it helped me to see, but until 24, 25, I never really saw it like that. So it took me a while. So if I heard if I heard someone who's a woman say that early on, um I would have listened more. Just because, like, if it was a male that said it, I would not have listened more. Early on, like growing up, I would not have listened more. So I just thank you for literally sharing. Like, this is very healing for me. Like, I know this show is for, like, everyone, but I also get healed as well. So I'm really like appreciating this conversation because the other day I had a conversation with the universe and it was just like, I'm ready to, you know, advocate for men as well.
And I think sometimes it helps. As a police officer, I was taught to see victims and perpetrators as opposed to men and women.
Mm,
Um, and sometimes, in a way, it helps because women can be perpetrators, they can be abusive, they can assault, they can harass, and men can be victims, and they can be victims of all sorts of horrendous crimes. So I think I understand it's when anyone has been very badly treated by, one of the genders, it's very easy to have, a lot of, upset and hurt and hatred towards that because of how you've been treated. But I think it's important to realize that it's not everyone, isn't it? As you
right.
found. So I think that it's very unfair to put male perpetrators and male victims in the same box
Mhm.
because we may
Mm,
have been very, very badly and
I
unfairly
see.
hurt by a male perpetrator,
Mm,
then that's not okay for us to then ignore the
right,
boy who was raped or the man who was consistently assaulted for 23 years by his wife.
mm,
It's not okay. They shouldn't lose because we have
right,
been, assaulted or harassed by a
right,
man. The male perpetrators, they're a subset. They're not the entire male race.
right,
Um, and it's the
mm,
same with women. Not all women are victims.
right,
Some of them are, equally horrible and equally evil.
mm,
So I think this is what we have to step away from
mhm,
is labeling genders as all one thing.
mhm,
And stop attaching the word victim to female and the word perpetrator to male.
mhm,
We need to stop doing that because this
mm,
is sort of what happens a lot in the media and what happens
yeah,
a lot in training packages, etc.
yeah,
And we just keep associating the genders with one side only.
right. And that's something that I believe around the age of 21 in therapy, I was like, I know I hate men right now, but it's not fair to them to hate all of them if they didn't all do something to me. Like,
Mm.
so I was able to start changing my verbiage, right? From because I told myself I was like, you can say that if you've met every single male on this planet,
Yeah.
then you could say you hate them if you
Yes.
they
Yes,
did something to
exactly.
you. But if you so that helped me to pause when I was starting to think or say out loud, ugh, all men. And so it took me about a good year and a half to fully change my, my verbiage and how I speak because, how speaking does do things to the brain as well, right?
Does.
And
Yep.
so, yeah, and so I realized early on, like I had to change it. I was like, one, that's not fair to me to treat someone else for the mistakes of another person when
Yeah.
they both didn't have anything to do when the other person didn't have anything to do with it. And so that's what helped me heal is and grow in that, but it took a long time for me to get to this point.
Yeah,
But
it does.
yes, but I love what you just said. Yes. That is very, very important, um, wording is important, because the media, at least I don't know how it is in the UK, but at least in America, the media is so generalizing. It very is. It says it'll say all Republicans or all Democrats or um, everyone in this country, everyone in that country, when they're not talking about the people that don't agree with their country's leader, and so
Yeah.
I know from what I've heard from folks that are in other countries that I'm friends with, they their media makes it seem like all of America, supported Trump when that wasn't the case at all. And in fact, so many now who've even voted for him regret him, And so, but and so I've noticed that generalizing, and it makes a country and all of its people hate another country and all of its people because of the generalization when
Yes.
there needs to be, you know, the truth. The
Yeah.
truth is complex, the truth is broken down. I think it will help people mentally and alleviate frustrations if they hear this country's leader and some of its citizens, but not all,
Yeah.
support this, right? So
Yeah.
I'm seeing the generalizing everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of lazy, isn't it? It's lazy human
Mhm.
behavior, it's lazy language, it's lazy journalism. It makes a much more punchy, grabby headline to make it so dramatic like that. And we tend to do this when we get tired, when we get emotional, when we get stressed. We
Mhm.
do tend to make these sweeping generalizations, which really is the foundation of a lot of prejudice, a lot of
Yeah.
racism. So we have to be very careful, I think. And it happens here with these sorts of offenses. It can become quite sexist and when we start
Mhm.
talking about these topics, yeah.
Yeah. That is very, very true. Um, by the way, if you see me look off every now and then, it's because I'm making sure that the sound is good and that we're still recording. So I'm listening very actively. I just gotta make sure we're good. Make sure we're good. Okay, so this kind of plays into our next topic, like why male victims stay silent.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying before, I think it's hard for them to talk when they don't know who
They
to
need a
talk
safe
to.
space. Yeah.
They're worried. They see the attitudes maybe of people around them laughing, taking the mickey out of situations, something they've seen on telly, something they've read on social media, and they're sitting there listening to people around them, watching them carefully, thinking, well, if you're taking the mickey, making fun of that person, maybe you're going to do that to
Doing
me
to me,
if I
right?
try and share what I feel or what I've been through. So I think it's very difficult for them to come forward, and they're worried about maybe the effect it's going to have. Will this damage relationships? Will it damage their job, their reputation? They can have a lot to lose potentially, and
Right.
they think, is it worth it? And then, of course, when we start talking about these experiences, it becomes part of our identity. It can give us a label. Some people find that label quite freeing. It enables them
Hmm.
to sort of get closure and to face things. Other people don't want that label. They don't want to
Mm,
be seen as a victim. Some men won't want to be seen that way. They won't want to be defined by it.
mm.
So again, that can hold them back. I think there's lots and lots of very good and understandable reasons why anyone doesn't talk, including men.
Right. That's a ooh. Oh my gosh, that's a great point. That's because for me, it was so freeing. It was so freeing, just and I've noticed, the subjectivity of labels, how, they just are, but depending on the environment, it could be a quote unquote good thing or a quote unquote bad thing, or it could be something, right? So, I love that you had said that. I never really thought about it like that literally until you said it about how what if someone doesn't want to carry that? Because what if, you know, yeah, everyone's different, right? Like
Mm,
everyone's different and everyone goes into different environments.
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. For some people, like you say, it's quite empowering to be able to
Yeah.
come out with that experience and what's happened and
Yeah.
whatever. But for other people, what if they're not surrounded by good people
Right.
and they're going to be, laughed at or thought badly of? That,
Right.
oh my God, that happened to you. Oh, you're weird. I'm staying away from you. And people will do that. This is the
That's
horrible
true.
reality. They might lose friends. Their partner might look at them in a way that they don't like. What about it at work? Will they lose respect, credibility? Will they lose business? None of this should happen, but it's the
Mm.
world we live in that it can happen. Or even if it can't, it's something that somebody will worry might happen, and that
Right.
fear of it happening alone can be enough to make somebody keep it to themselves.
Right.
But not just that, when we say these things out loud, we have to face it ourselves, and that's incredibly difficult. Maybe it's part of our coping mechanism to put this experience in a box. It
Mm.
could be so horrible, that
Mm.
trauma, that experience, that we don't want to talk about it because it's
Mm.
just too painful. And we just break apart even thinking about it or saying it. So
Right.
maybe it's the only way that we can live and function is
Mm.
to keep it in a box. I know that talking is good. I know that talk therapy is great, but it's not for everyone.
Right.
And some people, the only way they can get through life is to
Mm.
just keep it in a box.
Hmm. That's a good point. I never saw it like that. What are you, so if someone is in a bad environment, right? And by bad environment, folks, I mean more like, you know, their the company around them, not necessarily environment as in like, oh, geography, weather, right? But the social environment, right? Um, and if you don't have an answer to this, that's okay too, because I definitely wouldn't have an answer to this. Um, what do you, what could someone do, if a man is doesn't want to talk about it or just scared to talk about it, but their social environment is not healthy, what can they do? What have you seen done? What do you suggest they do? What should happen?
What does the man do, or what does the people around them do?
What does the man do?
Well, I think it's something we need to all do in our lives is actually choose the people who are around us very
Mm,
carefully. And if you're not surrounded by people who don't just love you, but they like you and respect you,
right.
then you need to think about your
That's
company,
true.
really, don't you? Because you deserve not just to be loved, but you deserve to be liked and respected and to have people around you who are kind. It's like they say, you can't choose your family. Your family might love you, but they're not always kind to you. So this
Right.
is why sometimes people reduce the amount of contact they have with them, if not completely cut them off.
Right.
But you can choose who you partner with. You can choose your friends.
Right.
You can try and choose your job and your colleagues if possible.
Mm,
It's difficult to just
right.
whip up a job, but if it's really awful, then you want to try and move on.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that everyone deserves. And then if you are surrounded by good people, then at least you have the choice
Mm,
of who to talk to and whether you can, whether you're ready.
yes. How does someone know if they're a safe person?
Well, I think you know by looking at that person and listening to them.
Mm,
So, this is what I was saying before. I think male victims, like a lot of victims, sit there and when they have conversations with their partner, with their friends, they listen to what they say. They listen to their opinions, the
mm,
comments they make when you watch a film or, see their reaction to a scene in a film where somebody is, assaulted or a man is speaking about something. You see their reaction to something that's on social media or to a little meme or a
mm,
video that's
mm,
gone around. And you watch them. And if this person is laughing at somebody's pain or discomfort, or they're
mm,
taking the mickey out of another man for something he's gone through, or they're laughing. Let's say there's a situation where a female teacher abused a male student, and they go, "Well, hey, wasn't he lucky?" Which, of course, is totally wrong and inappropriate response.
Right.
That male is going to think, "Whoa, well, I'm not going to tell you about my experience then, because if I was assaulted by a
Right.
woman in the past, I'm not going to tell you because you're just going to laugh at me and
Mm-hmm.
think I was lucky." So I think they listen to those people around them very carefully.
Right.
And if you think about yourself, your friends, family, you know what their values are, you know what their
Right.
opinions are, you know what their morals are. And you probably, before you even say something or share a story, you could guess what their response will be. And
Right.
I think that goes on quite a lot.
Exactly. I was gonna say something very close along those lines is, you could I did this one time. Um so what I did was I wrote out a little bit of my story, but I said that it was a friend who sent it to me. And so I sent it to the person. I was like, what do you think of this? Just to see their response, right? And then eventually I told them, okay, it was me. So kind of like you could say, oh, this person at work, or I came across the internet and I saw this random statistic just pop up. And what are your thoughts on that? Like you can ask them that maybe and see how they respond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think people do that all the time. And sometimes it just happens naturally, it just happens organically.
Yeah.
you know and they'll know, won't they? You know the people around you, if something happened, could you tell them?
Right.
Could you share it with them? What would their response be? What would their reaction be? Yeah.
That's true. That's true. But there are some people though that, and this is where it gets kind of tricky, even more tricky, right? Even more complex is they could laugh at other people, but when it comes to you, now all of a sudden they get it. Now
Yes.
they're just like, "Oh my God." Which was like that when I was 24, 25, I would laugh until he told me. And then I was like,
Yeah.
because I care about you so much, like
Yeah.
now I get it. And literally it changed my whole life and now like I'm definitely like so much further in my healing journey because of that. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen all the time, but like, you know, um, it could be real.
Hmm.
It could be real.
That absolutely does happen, but if you think about the male victim, will they take that chance?
Right,
Will they take that
exactly.
chance that although you've been making fun of everyone else, that you'll actually be nice to them?
Right,
And they might take that chance, or they might not.
right.
But I think a lot of time it's very difficult. And the thing is,
That
even if
is,
they're
yeah.
surrounded by wonderful people, they
Hmm.
then have to get over the hurdle themselves of saying it
Yeah,
out loud. And as I say, it's very difficult because
it
it's
is.
going to change your identity, and they're going to see you in a different light, in a different way. And do you want to be seen that way? Some
Right,
people think, oh God, they're going to be so nice. They're going to be, just drowning me in sympathy. And I don't want that. I don't want sympathy. I just want to, so that again is something else.
mm,
So it's you can get a nice reaction, but maybe even that reaction isn't what you're going for.
exactly. Oh, I love that you mentioned that. You're helping mention the complexities that, are in this realm, right? Within those experiences, right? Like I always say like abuse is so complex. Why? Because it can have lifelong, well, it often does have lifelong, it, it has lifelong influence, right?
Yes.
Whether that's for the better or for the what we define as worse, whatever that looks like for someone. Um, but it's so complex. It can influence decisions. It can influence, even a decision that you think has nothing to do with it, like a decision at a job, whether to take the promotion. Sometimes that could be correlated with,
Yeah.
abuse from the past, like it influences whole life. So
Yeah.
that's why I always say abuse is so complex. So I appreciate you, expressing and giving us more perspectives on complexities that I will miss. I definitely will miss because my experience, I guess because I am gay, And I was always socialized around women, socialized to be a girl that I have not experienced the laughing at, right? I have not experienced that or any invalidation. Mine was always valid, validated. However, I do know that that's not everyone's experience. So thank you for bringing that extra perspective that I'm not able to see because of my privilege in that area, right? So thank you so much because it's very important to hear the full truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say it'd be sort of lovely if we got more sort of variance in some of the media that we see, social media, sort of TV, film, books, all of that sort of stuff, because we still get quite a lot of stereotypes on there, don't we? And I certainly have learned a lot by working so closely with so many men for so many years. I really got to see what life and jobs were like through their eyes, and I heard
Mm,
a lot from their perspective, so it gave me a much sort of better understanding of what it
mhm,
was like to be them. And they would tell me things like, you know, that they would go into a training day and they would just wait to be criticized. They would just wait to be told that just because they were a man, that they were wrong, they were sexist, they were misogynist, etc. When they hadn't done anything wrong, but they
mhm.
were just getting this label just by being a man.
Right. It does
And that was
happen.
very interesting because, of course, I don't get that as a woman. I get other things, and
Hmm.
both genders get treated unfairly in different ways. But that was what they found. So I found that very interesting. Other things they told me were that it's hard to speak up for themselves, but they also can't speak up for other men because when they
Mm,
tried to speak up for other male victims, they've been shouted down and told that they didn't matter, they weren't important, that women, that female victims were far more important because they were the majority,
mhm,
and that men are the ones who are dangerous, they're predators, you need to shut up and go away. So I think this has been an unfortunate consequence of this wonderful progress we've had for women in the last few decades and for female
mhm,
victims, a lot of female empowerment, which is fantastic.
mm,
But a very small knock on effect of that has been that men have felt that they can't come forward and speak about their
mm.
experiences as a victim.
Wow. I didn't think there was any progress in that in the male aspect. Wow. Oh my. Yeah, that's very true. So how can we, Leanna, how can we support male victims without dismissing anyone?
Well, I think we need to change our idea of what a victim looks like. I think we need to be more open-minded and have a more diverse range of images in our heads, and we need to see that reflected in media as well. I think training packages, again, also need to have a much more diverse range of victims and perpetrators. We need to stop stereotyping everybody. And I think when we have a much clearer and more well-rounded view, and we see victims and perpetrators as opposed to men and women, then we'll have a much fairer response. And I think we also need to understand that you can be compassionate for male victims, and it doesn't take anything away from women. There is
Mm,
enough room to have compassion for
for
everyone,
both.
for all
Yeah, for
victims.
everyone. Oh, I needed to hear that because I'm gonna be honest, I was struggling. I'm gonna be vulnerable. I definitely was struggling. I was like, if I advocate for men, I feel like I'm doing a disservice for women, even though my whole life, all I've been doing is advocating for women and very, very successful at it. Not advocating for women, advocating alongside women, right? Um, alongside that even playing field there. But I was struggling with that, the other day when I had this conversation with the universe, through like meditation and whatever. Um, you know, two multiple things can be true at once, and
Yeah,
having compassion for all. Yeah, like, and what also helped me, something that you said, is that image in our head, especially through training, right? Like, we need to see the diverse amount of people, right? And not just get caught up on just seeing one specific type of, oh, they're all like this. Because that's what our brain will do. We'll look at
yeah,
those familiarities and we'll make those associations. That's part of our survival mechanism,
yeah.
and so we'll do that. And you know what? Be honest with you, I think the media knows that, and I think they like the generalization of everything on purpose. But let me be quiet. That's the sociologist in me speaking. But I would say this. This episode has been extremely healing for me. Um, w- I'm speechless, and I'm very grateful that you came and spoke about this. Um, I think positionality is very important, and you being a woman talking about this, I think will reach um a lot of people. For example, like if I was a listener and this was like 10 years ago and you were a male talking about this, I might not even listen,
Yeah.
but you're a woman talking about this. So you're able to reach people um because of your positionality that, someone out of another positionality won't be able to reach. And that's how positionality works, right? Like that's just how it works, folks. This sociologist coming out, I know. So positionality, folks, is basically how do I say this in like easy terms? Um because it can get kind of complex, but pretty much like the it's who the message is coming from, who the research is coming from, right? So like someone who's a billionaire speaking on, what it's like to be of lower socioeconomic status, even though they've never been lower socioeconomic status, you know, who's gonna, you know, but if someone who's of lower socioeconomic status speaking on what it's like to be of lower socioeconomic status, oh,
Yeah. Get
folks
more
who are,
credibility.
yeah, they have more credibility. Right, exactly.
Mm.
So, but oh, that's a great way to say it. So, positionality can bring different types of credibility, right, to others listening internally, right? Um, for a plethora of things, right?
Mm.
So I want to thank you for coming on the show. You have been absolutely tremendously fabulous. Thank you so much for helping me along my healing journey. Um, this episode came at my conversation with you came at the right time. I'll tell you that.
I'm glad.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you. This was really personal to me because I know I'm able to recognize now like there's areas of lack in how I view those assigned male at birth than those assigned female at birth. Though I've gotten better over the years, there's
Mm.
still that gap. And so this has helped me close that gap just a little bit more, and I truly appreciate that. Um, Also, hello, everyone in the UK. So the UK, up until I think 3 months ago, was in the top three places that this podcast was has been listened to for years. It's been in the top three. Now it's in the top four. Vietnam just now took the top three, just slightly. So hello, Vietnam, and hello, UK. Oh my gosh, like, hi. Um, you do you have any, before we close out, do you have any, a website, have any work coming out that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram and YouTube. I've got a website called Lucy in Training, and my book Men Ignored is on Amazon.
Okay, fabulous. And so, folks, that will be in the episode description below. So just go and click, take it to there. Um, and lastly, so to all the men out there listening, if no one today has told you that you are worthy of love, worthy of healing, um, and worthy of being heard, allow me to be the first and allow yourself to be the second. You are worthy of love, healing, and being heard. And you are worthy of being liked. You matter. Your story matters. Um, your emotions matter. Your feelings matter. You matter. You do. Um, and thank you for existing on Earth. Thank you for all the good that you have added. Um, you are loved. And I truly do mean that from the bottom of my heart. Um, Alrighty, so check out Leanna's links below.